Well, it's a very good morning to you. Welcome to the program. It's Thursday, May 26, 2022. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for sharing with us once more as we continue to keep you up to date on the big events, the small issues, and those in between in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean, and in the wider world. This is how we begin AM Prime on this Thursday morning. We will tell you some of the things happening in the Caribbean. They're warning people in Barbados to prepare for a rough, wet season. In Grenada, they will soon apply CT scan services, as well as the addition of a CT scanner in the health services in our neighboring CARICOM sister country there. And in Jamaica, we will tell you about a lion biting a man in a zoo. So those things are included in the lineup today for a look around the region. We will be talking in the second hour with a man who has agriculture all over his personality. His name is David Paponet, and he talks about having tried to set up a kind of agri-development arrangement with people in Guyana, just as has been now concluded with the recent visit of the Prime Minister there. He talked about what happened. They were they got land and preparations for planting corn and soybean, but the thing got unhinged by some reasons, he was saying, administrative reasons. But with us. You remember this story, which was headlined An Act of God, the investigation into what happened on February 16th with the blackout that lasted 13 hours. And the team that looked at that and came out with a report saying that it was no fault of anyone, no human error was found, although the suppositions persisted that there was sabotage, there was interference with the system. And the other reason, the other issue about it was that it took so long, 13 hours to get electricity going in much of, if not all of Trinidad on that day. And the team to investigate that was headed by someone about whom there is no question as to his suitability for the position. He did a job that was accepted by most people, but there are some people who are still saying that they can't believe that nobody should be blamed about it. And this is the first time I think he's speaking publicly about it. Professor Chandravan Sharma, he's our guest on this segment of the program. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Andy, and good morning to your viewers.
All right, good to see you, good to have you, good to get a sense of what you look like, because so it's fascinating when somebody becomes a public figure, you become prominent, and you remain in the shadows. Of what I gather from people who seem to know you, say that is who you are. You don't seek the front line, you don't seek prominence, you don't seek visibility, but when you were identified as a person to head this team, I thought that the people who led me to your name, they knew what they were talking about, because when the thing happened and I tried to reach for people to speak with, one of those was a Professor Stephen Gift, and he led me to another gentleman, and that gentleman said, well, there's one person, I think, who, if he's appointed to head this team, there will be absolutely no issue about it, and that is Dr. Chandravan Sharma. And there it was. So they found you did this work, and you came up with the results you have. Let's talk about what it took to understand the issue, to analyze it, and then come to the conclusion that you did.
Well, Andy, the first thing you need to do in a situation like this, where you would have rumors and theories and what if kind of scenarios going around, is to do what we would call a forensic audit of what actually occurred. And the way we did it is that we did not accept anything that the utility had actually put out. We went out and we did our own research. We actually visited the sites. We looked at some of the issues. We looked at what may have probably happened. And we came to the unresounded position that what happened or what triggered the start of the event. So I want to differentiate between the trigger and the event.
All right.
What triggered the event was the fact that in the Grand Trace area, there is a 220 kV circuit coming from TGU in Labre, and immediately below that, orthogonally past it, underneath that is a single phase 12 kV circuit. It's really 6.9, but people will know it as a 12 kV line passing under the circuit. So it was about 4 meters below the lowest point on the 230 kV circuit, which is well within the standard. The standard is below 2 meters, so it should be. Now, with these kind of events, it's only when what I call, now a lot of people say it's a force majeure act of God. I prefer to term it a black swan event.
A black swan event.
A black swan event. So what happened is that it had this palmist tree, which is about 71 feet tall, which would be about that distance away from the 12 kV circuit. And the 12 kV circuit, in terms of standard, requires a clearance on either side of 30 feet. So you had this tall palmist tree there, and at the same time, there was a high wind alert by the Met Office. And the wind toppled this palmist tree. The palmist tree, subsequent to falling, when we did the investigation, and we did not rely on TNTEC's position on the tree. We actually got the Ministry of Agriculture to send an expert. And when they look at the tree and look carefully at the root was infested, was fungal infested. So it was weak, but you couldn't see that in terms of outward appearance. So it fell, and as it fell, and all this is happening in millisecond range, as it fell, it hits the top of the 12 kV line, it just touch it, and falls, continue falling onto the communications cable, which it might be TSTT, flow, these kind of cables. And it rested on that there. But in the process of touching the 12 or passing on to the 12 kV line, which was the first line it will touch, it did an effect which will be equivalent to when you strum a guitar string. So it actually, because of the speed, it strum it. And what you have is a vibration set up on the 12 kV line. Because of the sag of the line did inverse response to the strumming, which you will see in a guitar string. If you were to throw it, it goes up and down.
Right, because you write that in the piece, and you talk about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it goes up, it touches the first 230 kV line, which is the number 2 circuit, because that's the lower one, because we were on an undulating landscape there, and continues and touches the second one. So that's what triggered the event. The event now is what happens after that. When the line, 12 kV line, touches the 230 kV line, the line protection system, which are the automatic relays, sees this as a system fault. And the protection relays operated as they should, which is isolate the line, because a large current like that, which reached about 13,000 amps, in a line which would probably carry in about 200 amps. The line, the protection relay sends a signal to trip the lines off. So you trip the line, and then the first line also now went off. That's number 1. Number 2 went off first. Number 1 is the one that went out after, within a few milliseconds of it. And what happened is that you had the triggering event. That's your trigger. So to understand what happens subsequent to that is you have to understand a little bit about how our system operates. If we look at the global picture in terms of how the power is being distributed in Trinidad at that time, you had, and I'm not going to call numbers because numbers don't really make much of a difference. I'm going to call percentages, okay?
Yeah.
So you had the amount of power being, the quantum of power being produced for Trinidad from TGU, which is Lebre, was about 48% of the total consumption in the country. Penal was only producing about 4%. Unity was producing about 6%. And the Point Lisa's plant, PowerGen, was producing about 42%. So what the system sensed at that time is that, one, you had an immediate loss of 48% of the total power on the system. So just think about that. You have an immediate loss of 48% of the power, and you have all these systems begging for power. Okay, so if we put it in a layman's term, let's put it in terms of 100 amps. The country's taking 100 amps because 100 is a nice number, right?
Yes.
I lose 48 amps, but the country still wants 100 amps. But the rest of the generation in the system can only give me 52 amps because I have a deficit of 48 amps. So that's what happened at the immediate onset. So I lose this 48% of the power. Now, in a power system, it's just like a car. If you look at a car going up a hill and one going down the hill, if the car is going up the hill and I lose the something wrong with the engine, the immediate thing for the car in that it loses power from the engine, the car slows down. The reverse happens is that if I'm going down the hill and the car goes into neutral, the immediate thing happens to the car is that the car speeds up without getting any extra power from the engine. So that's what happened in the system theoretically. That's practically, sorry. And that's what is called inertia in the system. So because I've lost all this power, there's nobody to feed this 48 amps from PGU, which is 48% of the power, which is 537 megawatts. There's nobody to give this power. The generators are producing this power. So the first thing that happens with the generators at TGU, the speed goes up. So the turbines go into overspeed. And to protect the turbines, the manufacturer trips them immediately. That's the trip setting. So that has nothing to do with TNTEC. It shuts down immediately because you have to protect the integrity of the equipment. That's normal. So the TGU system shuts down completely on overspeed trip. That would have led to over frequency also, but the first thing that sees it is turbines. If we look at another part of the system which is not seeing the fault, but the one that requires 100 amps, but I only have 52 amps to supply it, they see a shortage of power. I want to see a shortage of power. What happens is that the turbines is straining. They are straining to provide this power. They cannot provide the power because they're not rated for that. So what happens is that the turbine starts to slow down, but what slows down faster is the frequency of the system, and they're linked. And that's the inertia. So the frequency of the system starts to drop. Now, TNTEC has what is called an under-frequency trip system. That is when they lose generation, automatically they have 7 or 8 trip settings where I start to shed load on the system to maintain the frequency of the system. However, the frequency of the system was dropping faster than the underload frequency, which was normally set. So nothing is wrong with the setting of the underload frequency trips. What happens is because of the huge amount of power which has been lost, the frequency and the rest of the system, which are Trinity, Point Lisas, and Pinal, dived. And the rate of change of frequency was faster than what the manual system automated, which could have repaired the system. And therefore, what it caused all the system, all the power plants to shut down to protect themselves. You need to protect themselves at that time, because if you're running under speed or over speed, you're going to damage the equipment. During all this time, because Tobago is self-sufficient, the undersea cable link between Trinidad and Tobago, which is there just for emergency to transmit power, and most of the time it is utilized to maintain the voltage profile in Toco, because Tobago has its own power system, that's the 64 megawatts. Within 1 second of the determination that the system in Trinidad frequency was dropping, the Tobago system was isolated from Trinidad, so Tobago didn't see any issues. So what you had, in a nutshell, is a black swan event, which is a normal cascading event, which occurs on all power systems, which shut down the system completely. So you are now zero, no power at 12:52 around the PM on the 16th of February. And that's the start and end of the power problem. The restarting is the next issue.
Right. Before you get there, let me ask you. So during this period, what were somebody like you? What were you doing during this 13 hours of blackness in Trinidad? What was somebody like you doing?
Well, Andy, you have to understand that I did not experience the event. I was in London.
Okay.
So, yes.
All right.
So I hadn't a faintest clue what was going on until someone called me and asked me about it.
All right. So somebody alerted you to what was happening here.
Yes. Somebody called me and asked for information, and I said I'm totally oblivious of what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. And you said that when you began the assignment, you did not take into account what TNTech had put out. Having conducted the examination and come up with a report, did what you find so square with what TNTech was putting out as to what they said had happened and why?
The trigger event was absolutely correct in terms of what they said started the event. There's some technical issues in terms of what are the issues that caused it, but I mean, they were perfectly correct in terms of that's the trigger. It's the tree and the 12 kV line touching the 230 kV line.
Yeah, okay, so let's go back and let's square that. When I asked you what you were doing, you were in London. Because when I was led to you in the immediate aftermath of the thing, and I tried to reach you, in fact, you said you were in London, and probably you could discuss it when you came back. But by the time you came back, you had been approached and agreed to accept this assignment to find out what happened. So in Tobago's case, you say that, so their system detected what was happening in Trinidad, and from what you described there, is it in another way to say that the system in Tobago sought to protect itself and isolate itself from contagion or contamination? Yes,
that's how the power system works. But these are all automated systems, right? The protection relays sense the issues, and what happened is that the Tobago system, the first protection is to isolate from where the fault is coming from. So there's COVID in Trinidad, so I isolate the anything coming from Trinidad, and I isolated the undersea cable so that there is no connection between Tobago and Trinidad.
Yeah, and I was told going into in the immediate aftermath of it about something called the Black Start capability, which should have happened, but that didn't happen. Can you explain that to the people who need to understand that?
Well, at every power station, most of the generators that you have on a power plant are utilized to deliver power onto the power grid. But before that happens, let's assume the power station has no power. Okay, none of the generators is running. There are two ways in which you can start the operation of the power plant. Now remember, to operate the power plant is not just the generators. The first thing you need to have on the power plant is a source of power which will power up the utilities of the power plant, which would mean the water treatment, the oil pump, the loop pump, the rotating equipment, some protection equipment. So I need to have that kind of power. But just remember, no generators are running. So I have to get that power from somewhere. And that power is small compared to what the generators produce. So there are two ways in which this happens. The first way and the simplest way is if I have other power stations and I'm connected to the grid, I can import power from the other power station and utilize that to start running my lube oil pumps, my water pumps, my utility lights, my turning gear, things like that. I can use it to run that and start to have all my system checks going on, because I don't start the generator like an engine, just bonks the starter, right? I have to make sure that I have all these services already running before I can start thinking about starting the turbine, pressure gauges, things like that, right? So I can import power, but in the case when I do not have power anywhere else, then I will have a small generator, which is called a Black Start unit, in the power plant, which I would start just like a standby generator and utilize that to provide what is called the utility service power to get me the power to start my machines. Once the big machines have started, which are the one that actually produce the power for the system, that started, then I can now stop the black start unit because it's there only for intermittent use. It's not to produce power continuously. It's very small. Okay. Now that's what a black start unit is. Now the issue is that there was only one power station that did not have a black start unit that can function, and that was Trinity, and TNTech knew that. So the issue was not that the utilities, the IPPs did not have black start unit. They had black start unit. The issue was a little more technical than that. And if you look at what happened is that TNTech gave the all clear for the utilities. All clear meaning, let me explain that one.
Yeah.
In a major event like this, where the whole system shuts down, the first thing that TNTech has to do, and each power plant would have their own issues to deal with before. The first thing that TNTech has to do is to send their workers outside and find out where in the country geographically the fault is, and isolate that location because and determine what is the problem there. And if they can't fix it, isolate it. Or else if you try to start the system up, I'm going to shut down again. So that's the first thing TNTech will do. So that will take some time. While TNTech is doing that, the other power plants, independent of TNTech, would be trying to get their black start unit up to start running their lube oil because the machines in them need to kept up oiled and rotating. And one of the issues that a lot of people don't understand because of the size of these machines. So the size of the machine, you just think about a motor. A motor rotates because it's only supported by a bearing on either side, a non-driving end and a driving end bearing. That's the full support. And the whole weight of the rotor on the motor is supported by these bearings. The same thing happens in a generator. But the difference being is that the size of the rotor is now in tons, very, very large weight. And they're hot because they were just rotating. Even the turbines are also the same thing. They're very hot, right? So because they're very hot, if I don't keep them continually rotating slowly and I leave them stationary in the hot state, what would happen, you just can conceptualize it, I would initially have the rotor horizontal, and very slowly, because it's not rotating and because of the weight, the rotor will bow. So it will start to deform. So what you need to do immediately when you lose a generator, you have to put the generator on turning gear, meaning it's a very small motor on the turbine to keep the rotation of the generator slowly, very, very slow. So I can distribute the weight of the rotor evenly and radially so that it does not bow. So that's the first thing all the IPPs will be doing. They'll be running to this to make sure they can get power to get all these things rotated, because if you allow the system to bow, to remain in that position, you're talking about probably days to get it back straight, because you'll have to heat it back and get it back there.
Right, and so I wanted to get to why do you think people refuse to accept what you say in the report? Although, like I said in my writing about it, there was no question about the putting together of the team that you headed. Nobody questioned the competence of anybody or the independence of anybody. That's an issue we have here. You know, people being seen as not appropriate for the job because we have things to protect and we are in the favor of the people who appoint us. There was no issue about that. But other people still say that this thing couldn't happen in the way it happened, and the reason you gave that it couldn't be avoided. So one MP said that he knows that it was sabotage and he knows who the saboteurs were. What do you say? What is it about us or this situation that people refuse to accept what the report says?
It's a peculiar. Well, it mightn't be peculiar. It's an issue you have with general population that don't understand high technical issues. I think it was compounded in Trinidad because if I remember correctly, this thing happened on a Wednesday or a Tuesday. The day after that, I think the Prime Minister sometime before said that he was going to apply this COVID restriction on people if they didn't come back out to work. And also, if I remember correctly, there was a wage negotiation in the air.
Yes.
So a lot of people jumped to the conclusion immediately it has to be something to do with that the union was doing this, would have liked to sabotage this because of what is happening and so forth. I must say categorically that we found no evidence of that. This was a black swan event. And I would like to call it a black swan because an act of God has to do with a natural disaster thing. This has nothing to do with it's a set of things, a perfect storm, a set of things that came together. Coincidentally, it happened, and it triggered the event.
Okay, and you say that in spite of that, or given that we seem not to have learned lessons from something that happened before, and you talk about the absence of an incident command system and so on that was not in place. But given that as it is, why do you think it took 13 hours to get us back to?
Well, if you look very carefully at a lot of the issues that you have, the first thing that people have to understand is that power system, we lose generators very frequently in power system, right? It's not a unheard of event. It's a normal event. And because you have what is called spinning reserves, a spinning reserve has to do with the fact that, okay, I have a car which is rated at 15 or 140 horsepower, but typically I only use 100 horsepower, so the rest is really spare. So that's your spinning reserve. So in case I want to accelerate, I can call on that. So typically the TNTEC would have about 150 megawatts spinning reserve, meaning they're not using it, but it's available. Where if a generator were to fail, then no one sees it in Trinidad, right? Because the other generators pick up the load and distribute it evenly amongst themselves. The issue with this one is that we do not have frequent total power failure. Nowhere in the world is it frequent. So if you look at even anywhere in the world where you have a total system failure, the same issues occur in terms of how to handle it. However, this one in TNTEC was compounded by the fact that, and this is from my investigation, that we had a large turnover of the staff because of aging. So people who would have experienced these kind of issues would have transitioned out of the system by now. And the operators that are operating the system, both at TNTEC and the IPPs, have never experienced these systems. And one of the immediate issues you have to have, of all these several issues that you're taking, but the one that or the three that I would say that you must have good understanding of is one, a clear understanding of the total power system circuitry, a clear understanding of the demand, the power that is demanded on each circuit before I put on the power onto it. And the major issue that I found is that a clear understanding of the fact that if I de-energize a transformer for a long period of time, the first issue that happens on this transformer is what is called an inrush current. And the inrush current, typically in a transformer, that's a transformer which has been de-energized. There's no magnetism in the transformer again because it's totally dissipated. The inrush current that the transformer requires is about 6 to 8 times its rated. So let me put that in terms of a numerical example. Let's assume I have a transformer which is rated 100. Let's forget in the units, 100. And I am starting, remember I'm starting the generators one by one. So I have a generator which is 50, right? So I'm going to start this generator 50. So the generator is started. I have the transformer connected, this is 100. The transformer has been de-energized for 12 hours. So there's no residual magnetism in the transformer. From the time I turn that the switch to put power onto the transformer from the generator, the transformer would require immediately, in the millisecond time frame, 100, which is rated, multiplied by 6 to 8. So let's take the minimum. 600 times that. So it requires 600. But my generator is only 50. So what happens, the transformer, once the 600, the generator can only provide 50, and it starts to happen again. Because the generator can only provide 50, it sees that the generator slows down, because like you put a big load on the generator and it shuts down. So that's the issue that you have, and it was recurring all the time, because when they start, these things are happening over and over. And you're seeing a lot of errors in terms of not understanding to take into account the charging current that is required by these circuits when they are dead.
When you say you're seeing a lot of errors, you mean in people's lack of understanding of how the system works?
Yes.
In talking with someone in the immediate aftermath of it, or while it was going on and so on, he raised an issue that some people kind of latch on to. And there's this view out there that because Stantec does not produce its own power, that sort of intensified and created a larger problem than may have been. What's your view on that?
That has to be a union issue. No one in their right side mind could come up with that, because no way in the international world is just like what this is. You have an operator of the power system, and the operator buys power from an independent power producer. That is not the issue. That's a red herring.
All right. But you say that no lessons were learned from a similar kind of incident in 2013. Can you talk a little bit about that? That's when we had the total gas shutdown. Yeah.
The issue there, we understood what happened, and the generators would have shut down slowly, because gas don't just shut down immediately, right? Slowly. So you have a period of time in which you can bring your generators down slowly, because you have a lot of compact gas in your pipeline. So it's not a quick shutdown, but the system shut down eventually. If you look back at what had happened in 2013, it's the same issue in terms of the tripping when they're trying to start the system, which again points to the fact that they were trying to start some of the generators onto a de-energized system, which is a dead bus. Usually they call it a dead bus in the power technology term. They're trying to start on a dead bus, but not understanding that you have to take into account the inrush current. And because most of these starting on dead bus have now been automated, a lot of the training programs have not gone through the technical requirements of what these things mean. So that's one of the issues that you would have coming forward as we advance more into automation. Automation removes the human inference in a system. It then requires the person who is operating not to know as much, because the automated system is going to do everything for you, which is an expert type system, which is automated. But what happens, you see it when you have a major issue and you require human intervention, then you see the shortcomings and the lacunae that are in the person's knowledge base.
Yeah, and you say you think it would have been easier on us over these 13 hours if there were these official alerts from the ODPM, for instance. You assign a kind of role and function here to the ODPM, but they didn't step up. That is correct?
Yeah, one of the recommendations that we have is that we should remove this term of natural disasters and have an umbrella term called national disasters. The reason for that is that natural disasters what the ODPM looking at, which is your act of God issues.
Flooding and so on, and hurricanes.
Kind of hurricane and this kind, right? But when you have a national disaster, which is the total loss of power in the country is a national disaster. When you look at that, you'll realize that no one, the utility, the IPP, the security system, nobody sees that as a national disaster. They never contemplated that as a national disaster. And because it was never contemplated, there was nothing in place to trigger what should happen when that occurred. Now, what happened is that when you have a disaster like that, like TNTech is fighting to get the system up, and you also put onto them to alert the country what is going on step by step, you are now ending up with issues for TNTech to do, which is not part of their normal function. But it's part of an ODPM function because they have that as their requirement in a natural disaster. So what my recommendation is that we have an umbrella term called national disasters, redefine disasters in the country, include the total power failure in the system as a part of a national disaster, which would include natural disasters, such that the ODPM comes in on its own. They don't wait on TNTech to ask them to come in. And therefore, they can help in the dissemination of information and leave TNTech to do what TNTech is good at doing that, not disseminating information.
Yeah, you say in the report that the ODPM should not have had to wait on a request for assistance.
Yes.
But in looking at it, what I said in the piece that I wrote was that this could have created some more confusion and fighting for turf, as it were, because there are no established protocols as to how that is going to be done.
Yeah, that's why I said in the future, you create this new umbrella term, the national disaster, and you get the ODPM to come in. Because you see it in this disaster that the ODPM, because of how they are set up, didn't see their input as being a requirement, save and unless they are requested to do something. And nobody see the ODPM as a unit that they should request help from. And it's compounded by the fact that TNTech is trying to give out information to a country which has no power. So everybody's router at home is dead. I have no Wi-Fi, but they're using Facebook. So there are very few people who can access what is information. Most of the older people will not be on Facebook. The younger people will be on Facebook, but very soon after the cellular network is going to went down because their battery system also died after about 4 hours. So no one contemplated what we should do when there is a total power failure.
Yeah. So even if you didn't recommend it, this thing calls for some kind of rewriting of the rules of the game for reporting on and informing the population when there's a national disaster such as this.
Yes, I agree. And if you look at the reporting, let's assume we really had a natural disaster. And I hope the ODPM is not going to report to the country on Facebook. Because, again, you see what the issue is. Because in a natural disaster, you may have all the power plants down. Because the lines have fallen down. Not because the power plants can't generate, but because the lines have fallen down. And again, it comes back to the same issue. If I do not have power in the country, how do I inform the public? And if you look at a lot of people have hooked on so much on the digital world that the simple analog world that used to work irrespective of what happened, they forget that we still have that kind of world outside there in terms of how to communicate.
Yeah, and that made the issue worse, that the fact that people were not getting the kind of information that was necessary.
You get what we term in the report the peoplegram, where people start to discuss things. So we call it basically the Trinidad mapogram. Everybody talking, and everybody have their own theory, and the theory goes up, and whoever have the most outrageous theory, that one becomes the best theory right now, you know what I mean?
But the report, you gave some credit to that, to the peoplegram, because you say at least people were trying to keep people informed about what was happening.
Yeah. So you can't fault the peoplegram if there's nothing else. If there was something else, you could fault them, but there was nothing else.
And how significant it is when you say in the back end of the report that you tried to get information from such agencies as the Strategic Services Agency and the National Operations Fusion Center, and they refused. Isn't that some kind of offense? Is that not a reportable matter, an actionable matter then in a situation like this?
I think so, but I mean, we've reported it, so we can't do anything. So we have identified it. So whoever the powers may be, they should take that on. I mean, that's not for us. I'm a technical person.
Yeah. What's been anybody's reaction to that? And
actually, it has been very silent. We haven't heard anything on that. I haven't gotten any feedback for that, and I think our people have just gone back into our typical camp, open and close the door and button the hatches and said, okay, we are who we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you didn't have the articles of association. I'm not sure that is the term, but the terms of engagement that you had, you didn't feel that you had more authority to say, well, look, this is what is required from your agency as we try to understand what happens here and to figure it out. You didn't have sort of.
We had the power to ask them these questions. They were all officially written in terms of providing the information, but we had no power of enforcement.
Yeah, you couldn't demand anything.
Couldn't demand it, yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the issues that I didn't raise there is that WASA refused to give us information. And I had to just before we wrote up the report, I had to go to the chairman and get the chairman to get the CEO to respond. And we got it just the day before.
Yeah, and you I suppose in your report would say that something like this has to be addressed, and somebody has to get a addressing down for this, you would think?
I think so.
You say that they seem to be hiding behind, that is the SSA and the National Operations. A cloak of secrecy and national security confidentiality.
Yeah. So which I consider hogwash. In this situation, you can't hide behind that.
All right, so where do we go from here? What do you expect to come out of the report and your recommendations? Because a lot of times we go through these exercises and then nothing happens, and when a situation will happen again and we're back to square one.
Well, I would assume that the powers that be, which would be the government, would implement the recommendations. I don't have any power to force that. I was only asked to do a technical review, and our team was given terms of reference, which we think we satisfied. They were given a time frame. I think we came well within the time frame. So, but I have no other power again. So I mean, that is as good a question as any other question. You know, ask me if I will see God. I can't answer that.
Yes. Yes. All right, Professor. Thank you very much for talking with us on this. It's been a huge learning experience, Professor.
Thank you very much, Andy.
All right, thank you very much. I was saying it's been a huge learning experience as to what happened, how we came through it, and what you saw, and how you went about finding what you found.
Thank you.
All right, Professor Chandraban Sharma, the chairman of the team that undertook this exercise to find out what happened on that day, February 16th, when we lost power in Trinidad for 13 hours. Well, as we head up to 7 o'clock, let's take a look at what the COVID-19 figures say. You know, it's on this day, the totally recovered patients and the rest of it, 146,311, the total recovered patients, 9,509, the total active positive cases, 3,899. That's the death toll this far. The total positive cases reported in the country since we began the checking on March 12, 2020, 159,719, 375, that's the number. The new positive cases reported in the country in the last 24 hours, and 197. That's the number of persons in the parallel health system dealing with COVID-19. We go now to our first look around the region. We go to Jamaica, where they are saying that a man was bitten by or let's put it in an active way, a lion bit a man in the zoo. So they're looking at protocols there to treat that. Watch this.
Paul Ferron, owner and operator of Jamaica Zoo in Lacovia, St. Elizabeth, is trying to move on from this incident. The injured staff is said to be recovering.
The person is being attended to properly. Like basically this morning, it's as a public holiday. Most of the doctors is supposed to went in to get treatment. I was like, their hands on, make sure that he get sorted out. So good so far, he's recovering.
But even as the staff is being tended to, reactions have been strong.
Like I said, I consider it the height of stupidity. I think it's cruel and unnecessary.
I am not blaming the lion. You see, because if you don't put your finger through the fence, the lion can't bite it.
That was a stupid act, and so normally you pay for whatever you do. Simple.
Another video has since emerged online which appears to show a similar incident. It's concerning for the Jamaica Medical Vets Association.
It seems to have been a habitual taunting of these animals to get them to react and to entertain the public. So you're very disappointed because zoos are first and foremost for conservation, they're for education, and they're for the well-being of animals.
Teasing animals, she insists, is not part of the standards of care for any animal anywhere.
It just feels like we've had so many incidents recently that have kind of shed a light on how much we need to address the issue of animal welfare in this country. You know, we have a Cruelty to Animals Act, which a lot of people don't know about, that there is an act with laws of how animals should be treated.
Dr. Osbill Watson is chief vet in the Ministry of Agriculture. He was part of a fact-finding team that visited Jamaica Zoo today.
There are guidelines as issued by the permits that they would have received in relation to the operation of the facility, and we want to ensure the public that we will investigate any matter of animal welfare abuse and to make sure that such incidents are not repeated, and if needs be, then the proper sanctions would have been put in place.
All right, so let's come closer home now to Grenada, where health authorities there are reporting soon to be introduced CT scan services at the public health, at least one of the public health facilities there. This report from the Grenada GIS.
Director of Hospital Services, Dr. Carol McIntosh, says the state-of-the-art equipment represents a game changer for healthcare delivery on the island, allowing for access to a CT scan in a timely fashion for those with head trauma, strokes, and other traumatic events. The CT scanner is a donation from the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, an invaluable gift for which the country and its people are immensely grateful.
We want to say thank you to the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, because they are the ones that donated the CT scanner and the power surge to us for this particular piece of equipment to come here in Grenada. And that, just even the story of why they're donating it is also important. One of the things was seeing someone who could not afford having the CT scanner, which is one of the top. That was something that brought joy.
The CT scanner was donated in 2019, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it arrived in November 2020. Installation is a complex and highly technical process, and as such, was undertaken over several months. That process is now complete, and during the past week, a number of test scans were conducted as part of the training phase in preparation for the commencement of service to the public.
There were points when they started the installation and the engineers who were sent in said, well, this is not working. So we had to stop. The way that the room was set up, the initial layout and of the layout that we had for the CT scanner and how it's supposed to sit were not in line. The AC was prepared for it to go straight, and we had it on a slant, so we had to remove some of the air conditioning vents to allow for the cooling. That took place, everything started working well, and then the completion of the installation was about 2 weeks back. Now we've completed installation of the CT scanner and it's there, but it doesn't mean that you just flip it on. Unfortunately, it's not like a TV. Flip it on, put the plug in, and you're going. It now needs to have that those who are working with it, the radiographer, the radiologist, and the additional team, the biomed team, who will be the first responders if anything goes down, had to be trained on this particular CT scanner.
On the front pages, at least, and inside these publications here, our partners in the business on this program, on this station, Newsday Trinidad and Tobago, On the front page, wage talks heat up that have to do with the offer of 2% for public servants and public workers from the CPO. The CPO invites unions to continue those talks in June. The Prime Minister says that we may have to borrow to cover the back pay involved when these negotiations are done. And the trade unions are saying that workers should be paid their just due. That's the front page of today's Newsday Trinidad and Tobago. Pride hold the upper hand. That's in sport on the back page. In the Newsday Tobago, a similar kind of story on the front page. They're saying Black Friday to protest the wage offer. The Tobago public servants will support the march in Trinidad and Tobago, in Trinidad as well, as the unions push back on this issue. Well, we take a break. We have news at 7 o'clock. On the other side of this, the Prime Minister, on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago, signed this agreement for agriculture, processing, and production with Guyana. There's somebody who says that he tried to be there some time ago before he talked about what transpired. David Paponet on the other side of the program this morning. Stay with us.
Want all the info on North Coast Jazz 2022? Get the all-new North Coast Jazz mobile app for Android and iOS devices. The #1 jazz event in the country returns for its 4th installment with 3 days of activities, May 27th to 29th. Download the app now and get all the info you need to get pumped and plan for the event. Ticket purchasing, event schedule, artist lineup, places to stay, places to eat, activities in the area, and more. Stay on top with all the latest updates with the all-new North Coast Jazz mobile app for Android and iOS devices. Developed by We Paula. Download now. North Coast Jazz 2022 Festival Grounds Blanchisseuse, May 27th to 29th. Born here, played here.
7 is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Psyched. Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
North Coast Jazz 2022.
Sound the horns!
After Family Saturday,
the sky ignites with Blue Sunday,
where Juve meets Pan meets soca.
Juve meets Pan meets soca. Look how the sun now raising up, and the crowd now waking up. The atmosphere have vibes, and nothing can break it up.
A Juve experience featuring Hadco's Phase 2 Pan Groove.
Mixed master DJs and powerful soca. Witness the expression of a newfound freedom with paint and vibes.
Vibes, 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 vibes.
Dance along to the music of our national instrument.
Blue Sunday, a colorful experience, a tradition you won't want to miss.
Sunday, May 29th, Festival Grounds, Blanchisseuse.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival 2022 comes alive.
3 days, 3 events, 3 experiences.
Born here, played here.
Sound the horn!
Get your tickets now at Crosby St. James, Extra Foods Arima, Sangre Grande, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Digicel Trin City, C3 Mall, and Digicel Head Office, 11C Marval Road, WESN 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival is brought to you with the kind support of the Sports and Culture Fund Secretariat, Office of the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, the Inter-American Development Bank, Digicel, Angostura, AMCO, Hadco, Blue Waters, Royal Castle, the National Lotteries Control Board, Gittins and Gittins Real Estate Agents, and WESN.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back. Well, he was last on this program when there was the rise in the price of flour, and he was talking about the implications of that and what we could do to adjust. There were other crops that people have suggested. He's on that league to talk about those things. Well, you know that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago signed this agreement, what's called what we call the Agri-Production and Processing Agreement, with his counterparts in Guyana, talking about growing crops there for mutual benefits. Well, this gentleman, we describe him as an agriculture business strategist, and he says that we've been there before and we could have been further ahead with that if people had listened to those like him. His name is David Paponat. He's coming to us from someplace in New York as we speak at the moment. Good to see you, David. Thanks for agreeing to have this discussion.
Hi, Andy. Good morning to you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. How are you doing?
Well, fine, thanks.
So well, again, it's nice to be here. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the news article that the Prime Minister went across to Guyana and came back with an actual incentive to get corn and soybean into production. You know, it has indeed been something that we have been working on. Some of my business colleagues and myself, we had an actual project in play. You know, so and being someone who I actually worked in Guyana for almost 3 years in agriculture as a consultant for an international company and some national projects. So I'm somebody who has been on the ground in Guyana, who has been around agriculture. I myself am a commercial farmer of 25 years. And, you know, I get my hands dirty. So, you know, this is no new field to me, agriculture and commercial agriculture and so forth. It indeed was a pleasant surprise to see that newspaper article, Andy.
You go ahead. Why did you say it was a surprise? Because
well, it surprised me quite greatly because the thing is, back in 2019, I had to undergo some public criticism in Parliament about a corn project that we had live in operation with National Flour Mills being developed by the then Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Vasan Bharat, and Mr. Vasan Bharat, Mr. Clarence Rambarat, who you know, publicly, you know, went up there and shoot down our project. And, you know, and the thing about it is that I find it funny that you know, a couple of years after, here we are having to start over. The thing is, NFM is a very prominent company in the country. We were the JSC, the Joint Select Committee hearing on rice production. We actually, corn was not on the table for discussion. You know, because our company had a proposal before the bank ADB, right, for financing this cross-border project in Guyana, where we had gotten 500 acres of land, and we had a signed MOU with the government of Guyana for collaboration on the project. You know, the minister, knowing that we were in collaboration with NFM, because he had a copy of the MOU that we have with NFM as well, you know, and he was in collaboration with the company. We found it, you know, real ironic that, you know, he would come to Parliament and make such statements. But here we are now. We are here some after, now beginning to start the discussions over again on corn and soybean production based on the practice that we are now in. However, I would applaud the efforts of the Prime Minister. The thing is, this project was not unknown to the office of the Prime Minister. I would have had several meetings with his special advisor, Dr. Allen, on the matter. However, you know, let's not go down into that too much. I just want to say I'm very, very happy that the government has seen it fit now to take a new direction, you know, on their views of cross-border food security projects as it relates to collaborating with Guyana. And I do welcome the initiative, and I would like to see this bring some serious fruits. But I must say, at the end of the day, being someone who worked in Guyana and who has been on the ground, you know, and who has been around the farming community, right, as an advisor, as somebody who actually worked professionally there, you know, because one of the privileges I had whilst working in Guyana was training all of the agronomists in the National Agricultural Extension Institute in Guyana, NARI, in sustainable agriculture and microbial technology, you know. So I have been on the ground, you know, and Guyana is not, it's a place that has its own challenges, but it's a place that holds great potential for agricultural expansion and as the premier destination for facilitating CARICOM food security. So as I said, I do applaud the Prime Minister's effort to give this particular type of project and projects like these, you know, some level of priority. However, I must say, many governments have come into power and have started these discussions and bared no fruit. You know, the thing about it is that as a private sector person, sometimes we are the persons who actually go in and actualize projects like these. You know, individuals like myself, I consider myself an agricultural entrepreneur. You know, we did put some money into the project, you know, about $200,000 actually. You know, we incorporated a company over in Guyana. We got our 500 acres of land. You know, we were even offered 500 acres by Gaisuku to do an alternative site, right, and so forth.
And that's the sugar company. Gaisuku is the sugar company.
Yes. I actually personally met with the then CEO of Gaisuku, and they were actually offering the possibility of partnering with us once we get past pilot phase in putting the possibility of putting 40 or 40 something thousand acres of land into the project. So, it's a lot of work was done. And I'm the person who actually was at the forefront of it. I spent 6 weeks in Guyana negotiating that MOU that we had. We also had one with CADI, well, of course, NFM was the first partner to this project because, funny enough, it was actually NFM that asked us to consider the possibility of assisting in starting a project like this. But the focus primarily was Trinidad at the point in time, But after some investigation, I had to suggest to NFM that Guyana would have been the best place to start such a project.
Right. Is it your feeling that I'm not sure to what extent you have any details about or any insight into this latest agreement, but you suspect that it might be the same land that you're talking about cultivating that is going to be used now in this project?
I have some insight into the agreement. However, the agreement is a broad agreement as well. It doesn't only incorporate agriculture, but collaboration between both countries on issues of trade and different things like that.
Yeah.
Now this is not the same project. It's not the same land. It's not. We actually procured our parcel from a private company operating in Guyana, which was the technical recommendation of NARI. As a temporary solution whilst we process our official land through Parliament, which is the normal process for acquiring land in Guyana, and you must have a legal company and so forth. They don't just get up and say, take land. You must have a legal company, be able to operate. There are a number of logistics that need to be put in place before projects like these can actually reach to the seed in the ground stage. And I'm fully aware of what they are, how extensive they are. Being a partner with NFM, they obviously would have wanted the issue of logistics to be worked out, not just discussed, but realistically showcased and planned for, right? Transportation and so forth, shipping and all of these things. And all of these things cost money, Andy. And this is not just, for us, it wasn't a talk shop. It wasn't just sign an MOU and just sit down there and see what happens next, All
right. So given what you know about these processes, so the signing of the agreement took place last week. When do you think it would be a good time to anticipate action?
Now, the funny thing about it is it's funny that you would ask that because there is a Guardian article yesterday in which I was interviewed about this corn project and this Guyana collaboration in which the present minister, who I haven't met yet, who I haven't had the privilege of speaking with yet, was questioned on, and his public comment, and which is in the public domain already, went along the lines of it being a CARICOM project or a CARICOM-centered initiative. And basically, they'll be waiting, sometime in August, I think they would have some further discussions and see how they're going to flesh it out and so forth and all of that. So, as far as I see, this hasn't gone past the stage of discussion much yet, right? And knowing and being accustomed to the speed at which some governments work, right, and some governmental administrations work, it may be a while before we could actually see some actualization of anything. But at the same time, as I said, it's a good initiative. I would be aware of as well that the Prime Minister did meet with the Brazilian company operating presently in Guyana doing the very same thing. The funny part is that we actually were due to start our project before this Brazilian company. However, it's good to know that someone else came in and showed and broke that glass ceiling and showed that this can be done here, because we were having some technical problems with ADB on the matter. They were saying that there is no track record in Guyana for such a project, and they found it a very big risk to do that cross-border project financing in a country with no track record for such. In spite of the fact that we had some international companies, US companies and so forth, collaborating on the project with vast experience in corn. That wasn't good enough. So I'm very, very happy that, all of this is happening. But at the same time, the actualization of that project, to answer your question, and to get, actual seed in the ground stage, what will have to happen is that this process will have to be expedited by the powers that be. This has to move beyond talk. We can't spend the rest of this year just discussing this. Some serious initiatives have to take place, and I would be waiting to see how this pans out, honestly, because governments wield a lot of power. It is within their power to actualize projects if they really get serious about doing so. So I'm not gonna throw sand on it, because I am in full support of this project, and others like these, I must say.
All right.
It's a good initiative.
All right. So help us out here with there has been this discussion, this understanding that there are said to be about 500 acres of land sitting somewhere in Guyana that was offered to Trinidad and Tobago to do stuff like that.
Well,
so that is.
Let me put it this way privately. The 500 acres of land was offered to us, a private company I am involved in, and leased to us legally, right? But Guyana holds 500 acres is like a little backyard thing in Guyana.
It's nothing, right? So they could find another 500 acres somewhere else.
I would say this: the requirements for the national beans. I put some extensive research into this project, and I would say that the land requirement for the actual corn and soybean consumption in Trinidad to really fit that bill, right? You at least have to go 50 acres, and it has to be 50,000 acres actually, and it has to be intensely cultivated. So I would even say this project could be up 100,000 acres large if we have to be in a position to really make any significant dent in CARICOM, right? I don't know if you're aware, Andy, but almost the entire CARICOM imports corn and soybean into our region as opposed to producing. We don't produce any corn and soybean of any substance in CARICOM, and this is a great need for the feed industry, right? And as you know, a number of other restaurant industries and so forth are connected to these things. So that 500 acres was just meant to be a pilot. The project that was proposed to the government of Guyana was for a 100,000 acre project, which NFM had agreed to partner with us to scale and to help finance once we got past the pilot phase. Now, this is not hearsay. We have these things in writing.
Yeah, and so given what you know, what are some of the steps that have to be taken, like yesterday, today, and going forward on the basis of this new agreement signed at this level of the heads of government?
Oh, okay. I would say a number of things. One, land allocation has to be looked at, for one. That two, the pooling of and the acquisition of some technical expertise and some players, financiers, project financiers, individual private companies who may be interested. This market is so large that it can involve a vast number of people, because it's an entire industry that is going to be created, which will also benefit Guyana in a significant way, right? So the pooling of those resources, so it must go beyond the point of discussion to actualization, where the project has to have some facilitation for land, it has to have some facilitation for financing, it has to have some facilitation for technical expertise, some planning and longevity has to be put to it as well. But to get the actual seed in the ground, individuals have to be able to come together, at least one company, right? To have a massive commercial pilot done. And I'm not saying a commercial pilot on the basis just of experimentation, but on the development and the fine-tuning of a corn production system to suit our financial model, right? Now, as I said, I've done some extensive work in this particular arena, and being in the US now, I actually have access to American corn growers, because I already had 2 companies collaborating with on this project in the US and so forth. So if the Prime Minister and CARICOM could move this from the phase of discussion to the phase of land acquisition, actualization of the project by engaging stakeholders, some degree of training may have to take place, the engagement of commercial farmers in Guyana as well to join the project as well. This can't just be a Trinidad-owned project, right? A contract farming system has to be designed and developed, right? To engage a number of parties who actually will be in the process and involved in the process of production. And these people, the actual producers now, will not be technocrats and people involved in government and so forth. This is where the rubber hits the road. I myself being a farmer, that's why I tackled this project, because I'm not just someone who has been technically involved in agriculture, but practically involved in it as well. So a number of these things have to take place, right? So I'm saying that for the rest of this year, if they spend the rest of this year just discussing this and discussing that, this project will not be ready to launch come January the 1st next year. I guarantee you that. And those Brazilians are already ahead of us.
And it should be, you're saying, you're giving January 1st as the time when there should be some kind of a kickoff, some kind of flight takeoff.
Yeah, if the state takes this serious, I wouldn't even include Guyana in this, because I would say from my experience, the government of Guyana has always been serious with agricultural related projects on a large scale. They have always been there. They have a very solid rice industry that supports the entire CARICOM and other countries outside of CARICOM, and it's very established and very well, put together. So Guyana does have experience in mass production and large grain industry type production. And they have the land, they have the water resource. They have a number of things. They need some assistance from CARICOM to launch projects like these, but on their own, they may be able to push ahead as well. So, yes, Sandy.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so I believe that January 1st could be a very good target date to aim for, to have an actual seed in the ground project startup, right? Individuals like me may have given the powers and I mean the empowerment and so forth, might have been able to put seed in the ground faster than that. But knowing that this is within the wheels of government and CARICOM and all of this diplomacy and all of these things, that these discussions and all these red tape and bureaucracy that normally happens when such projects are discussed, I would even say January is an ambitious target, knowing that they're gonna meet again and talk again and that type of thing. If we hold too many discussions on these things and no action oriented or solution oriented plan of action is put in place, we will talk about corn and soybean for the next 3 years.
Yeah, and what is the complementarity between the arrangement with Guyana, so that's the CARICOM arrangement, and then the proposed arrangement with Brazil?
The funny thing is this, because I've been aware of this Brazilian project long before the Prime Minister went over there. I have ears on the ground in Guyana, and it's a place, Guyana was my second home. I had an apartment in Guyana. So the Brazilians haven't had a different agenda, right? Truth be told. The Brazilians' agenda was to facilitate Brazilian food security, expand on Brazilian food security, right? And that to them is a cross-border project, similar to what we wanted to do, a cross-border project to the benefit of Trinidad. So they actually started this project, and this project was not supposed to be a CARICOM project or any CARICOM-based project. It's a project that was in collaboration with the government of Guyana. The government of Guyana most likely would have seen it as a beneficial project. One, the creation of employment. Two, the ability to create a track record for corn in that country, and as well the technical benefits to that collaboration in which Guyana itself could actually get into corn, which is a brilliant move, right? But at the same time, this Brazilian project, everybody's leaning on this Brazilian project, as if to say, for me, it is as though if the Brazilians didn't do it, none of us would have been brave enough to do it. And that's unfortunate, And this is, I'm not going to include the government of Guyana in this. I'll tell you why, Andy. Because Guyana has proven itself where the seriousness of that country and food security is concerned, right? It's some other countries in CARICOM, right? Some of them, Trinidad is included in that group, of countries that don't really take agriculture and food security as serious as they should. Moving these things from talk shops into realistic projects, they take more than talk. Being someone who has been on the ground, I could tell you that. I could tell you that. And, so yeah. So at the end of the day, this Brazilian project, yes, it's of benefit to Trinidad and Tobago. It can be a benefit of Trinidad and Tobago. I have to know personally that I know National Flour Mills is having some discussions with them as well, because it's always a project that National Flour Mills was interested in.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, because we were having a problem. When I was engaged by Mr. Kelvin Mahabir on this project, one of the reasons he told me for the consideration of this project, he was like to me, David, listen, we are having some significant problems constantly accessing foreign exchange. We have large quantities of raw materials that we have to acquire on a monthly and quarterly basis.
All right. In more ways than one, we just start talking about it, and then you have a desire to get it to the finish line. So we will continue to stay in touch with you on it, David. Thank you very much for talking with us on this.
Thanks a lot, Andy.
All right. Very welcome. And that's our broadcast for this morning. We want to thank you for watching. We want to thank our guests. We'll tell you that there is news on the hour at the top of the hour coming up, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Sean Smallwood. For now, I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.